To joining me today will be Andrew Linn. No, there's only two N's there, not three or four. Linn. But yeah, there's kind of an extra N on there. I don't know. Maybe we'll ask him why. But welcome to the show, Andrew.
Oh, thank you very much, Joe. Thank you for having me on.
So indeed, let's go there. Why the two N's? Andrew spelled what most would consider normal, Andrew, but Lynn, Linn.
Yeah, go figure, right? So a lot of people think that a lot of people before they meet me, they think I'm Asian. I'm not.
Bingo! Exactly. You see the word Lynn, but that's usually one N.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah.
That's right. So I've learned that that's Taiwan, common in Taiwan, Lin. But anyway, my grandparents immigrated from Russia, great grandparents, and they had some big, long, confusing, last name. And so, yeah, Ellis Island, they shortened it to Lin. So who knows what it was before then? But
I hear you. On mom's side of the family, it became Keeler from the Kiel, Germany region migrated. I have no idea what it was before. Oh, okay. You're from the Kiel region? Keeler, it is.
right.
And on dad's, my last name, Leonard, it looks French. It's not. It actually was Leonard Owaszkiewicz or
Oh
whatever, right?
wow, yeah.
Big long Polish thing. It got chopped to Leonard, but without the O. So I hear you. Names are always a fun exploration with me because of all these weird origins and origin stories. And well, let's chop it down and make it easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So, where were you born and raised? Where are you now? Significant places you may have been in between, and how much time did you spend in prison for what? For the
Well,
benefit of the transcript, he's laughing. We're laughing. This is a joke, people. This is a joke. But where, born, raised, that kind of thing.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I was born in Olney, Maryland. I grew up in Mount Airy, Maryland, and I lived there most of my life, and then became a nomad when I became a young adult and moved all over the place from Winchester, Virginia to Baltimore. My college was in Florida, Orlando, Florida. It's called Full Sail University. I went there for TV and film. And then right now I've settled with my family in West Virginia. So I've been, run the
Oh,
gamut.
now I'm going to have that in my head. Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Amen. That's right.
Yeah, and speaking of state names and whatnot, you mentioned Maryland, so I got my audience knows I can't pass on the lame puns. Were you indeed merry while in Maryland?
Yes and no. It was a good place to grow up, but I don't like it much anymore. But yeah, uh, yeah, kind
Okay,
of gone
so
gone off the deep end over there. But yeah,
yeah, yeah, I hear you. I understand. Anyway, or at any rate, as my audience knows, the ongoing running gag, I've cut out the ahs and ums that you got to try to avoid, but I've found I use the verbal crutch for segueing of at any rate. So it's been an ongoing running gag ever since. I don't even bother to try to stop myself anymore, and in fact, throw some extras in for fun. So, indeed, at any rate, the real reason you're here is you created a documentary, Church and State, Roger Williams and the Founding of Freedom of Religion. Uh, what was Christian show? So obvious pun. What was the genesis of that project?
well, I guess the genesis started with Roger Williams' Exodus. So Roger Williams is a little known figure, or maybe not. He's not a very well known figure from our history. He's the founder of Rhode Island, and the Exodus I
Mm.
mentioned was he was a Puritan that came here, immigrated from England, and he settled in the Massachusetts Bay Colony with these other Puritans. And he was a preacher. He was a Christian. People respected and loved him and admired him for his intellect and so forth. But they ended up banishing him because he believed in freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. A lot of people don't know that the Puritans had basically a religious state set up in Massachusetts, where they controlled every aspect of your life if you lived there, and they would boot you out for all kinds of reasons. You could be too proud if they deemed you were too proud.
They literally were a theocracy at the time.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So the while people think, and yes, people came here from Europe for religious persecution to be free from that, uh, the history was kind of repeating itself. They were starting new colonies that still had religion embedded with government. And so when Roger Williams was banished from Massachusetts Bay Colony, he founded Rhode Island. And as far as we know, he started the first colony with the first charter in world history to have separation of church and state in its charter, which he got from England and is basically the colony's constitution of that
Yeah.
time.
Well,
So,
when people hear church and state, they don't think Williams. They think
no,
the
right,
Jefferson letter, and of
exactly.
course the bastardization of it now gone from a minor quasi.
Yeah.
Please have a separation of church and state to a degree to freedom from religion of today. And that's not what was intended.
Exactly. I find it hard to believe. Of course, now the excuse me, the charter for Rhode Island is not the U.S. Constitution, and Roger Williams is not technically a founder that we think of. He was about 100 years prior to the founders we think of who founded the United States and wrote the
But
Constitution.
our founders learned from him.
Yes, we're inspired by a lot of figures. We don't know exactly if they were directly influenced by Roger Williams, but I'm sure they obviously knew the charter and the freedom of religion that took place in Rhode Island. And the big thing was, I would doubt that these, specifically Roger Williams, who again was a preacher, I would really doubt that he was trying to get rid of God and religion. I don't think he wanted freedom from religion. I think he recognized that when you mix religion and politics, you get politics. And people who seek power are often not the best people who seek positions of power in politics, and they would persecute people like him, true Christians, real
Mhm.
Christians. So the idea is to protect the church, not to destroy and get rid of the church.
Exactly. It does not preclude religious people from being a government. It's supposed to protect us from the government intruding on our churches, like the Johnson Amendment or the Johnson Rule. But yet
Right.
today, a worldly communist can go into a church and speak all day about worldly communism and the leftist deep state, not a peep. But if a Christian candidate, a constitutionalist, as I coin, goes into a church and actually talks biblical Jesus, biblical community, far different than worldly communism. There's linkage, but different. And oh, up in arms, and we're going to pull your tax exempt status. Yes.
Yep. Absolutely, yeah, and that's the freedom of and freedom from is very important distinction, and we have an example of freedom from religion. It's called communism. Communism is an atheistic form of government, and if you look at China, you can see what how the church is treated in a communist freedom from religion government. It's persecuted, and then a lot of people will ask me, well, here in America, are we under threat as Christians? We're always under threat as Christians, but by the grace of God, even if they do come against us and violate their constitutional rights, the federal government or state government, we fortunately do have the Constitution to push back. So they might get, some gains, but they'll win some battles, but they're not going to win the war as long as we, stick to the original intent and the Constitution and
Yeah.
use the Constitution to our benefit.
Yeah. And I understand why we have the notion of tax exempt status for religious. Well, let me back up. Also inspired by the Bradford Colony and the failure of worldly communism there, the Mayflower Commie Compact, a
Right.
commonwealth. Everyone was supposed to put in equally to get out equally. And of course, like the Animal Farm movie that's out now, that's not what happens. You get more and more. It's why Jesus said the poor will always be among you. There will always be some who won't do anything. They want to be pulled in the cart.
Right.
And especially we will get away with that if others are willing to
Same.
reward them for their sloth.
Yes. Right. Absolutely. Like, and I've heard it explained like in the Old Testament where it said, leave the corners of your field for the poor to come and, get food. Well, yeah, they had to work to get the food. It wasn't, give it to them. They had to go and, glean the whatever to get the food, the resources. They still had to work to get it. It wasn't just leave it, you do all the work and you leave them a portion. It was no, leave the corners for them to do the work so they can grab and get for
Yeah,
themselves.
I just quoted Calvin Coolidge, former President Coolidge, on X today, paraphrasing. One is not one may be down, but they are not truly out. But charity, no man makes his way back from down without personal effort. The difference between a helping hand up and a handout, which in modern parlance has become a leftist practice of creating dependency to buy votes that way. Power and control over people will let you be lazy, like the Animal Farm movie. Hey, free grain, free grain. Nothing's free. There's always attachments. But to the tax exempt status, I really would like a church to grow the cojones to say, you want our tax exempt status? Take it. Go ahead. We'll start paying you, and we will say what we want to say from the pulpit, as they should. Why we're giving, and again, I understand why we're doing it, but at the same time, a political nonprofit doesn't have exempt tax deductible statuses. The churches probably shouldn't either. And then they would be unrestrained and then lower the taxes for everybody so nobody's paying so much in taxes.
Yeah, potentially that's a good idea. But, in turn, I think the idea behind no taxes on churches was for them to be charitable
The
organizations.
bulwark of our Judeo Christian foundations, biblical community,
Right.
charity. The
Yeah.
local charity knows, and the Bible makes the distinction. I'm on disability. The Bible makes the distinction between those who are unable and those who are unwilling. Back to Jesus' statement. And indeed, the local charity knows the difference between someone who needs and someone who's a lazy con.
Yeah,
The
right.
government doesn't bother to even attempt to make the distinction, and it's why we have so much fraud in it today. Yes.
Right. Amen. Yeah, absolutely. And an important thing also about taxes, part of the reason I made this film is to remind people of the history or teach people the history. A lot of people don't know this stuff. When people think of separation of church and state, when they think of that Danbury Baptist letter with Jefferson, what he was addressing was they were concerned, the Baptists, because in that time the colonies each had their denomination, as I mentioned. So when you lived in a colony, you would pay taxes to a specific denomination, whether you agreed with that denomination or were of that denomination or not. So if you lived in Virginia, were a Baptist, you were paying taxes to the Anglican Church. And as a Baptist, you don't like that. Why would you like that? Why are your taxes going to that
Yes.
that
Yes.
specific denomination? So that's in part, that was one of the reasons for what Jefferson was talking about, the separation of church and
Yeah.
state. And then also they didn't want a denomination ruling over the country federally, one denomination, because that was the case in Europe and that was the case in the colonies.
Yeah.
And they knew that, that wouldn't be good because it always ended in strife between the
Yeah.
people
And,
who,
and as you pointed out to a degree or alluded to, implied a lot for sure, each colony, and eventually even many of the states had their
Right.
own constitutionally declared official church.
Right. Yep.
It's not a violation for a state to have it in their constitution. It's a violation for the federal government to have it in place. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for instance, one of the gentlemen I interviewed for the documentary, he's a New York Times best-selling author, and he wrote the premier book on Roger Williams. It's called Roger Williams and the Creation of the American Soul. And he's left of center, or maybe far left, either way. He I asked him a question, do you think there's a violation or is it in threat today, the separation of church and state? And he said a clear violation is where he lives in Louisiana, they put 10 commandments in public schools or something. And so a lot of people would say that that's a violation, but I would say if the people
I,
want it and they voted for it, what does it matter? If that's
well,
what the
yeah.
the voting
We
bloc
are
voted for.
we are not a mobocracy, so I would oppose it from the mobocracy standpoint, but I support it based on our battle cry of our revolution was no kings but King Jesus. So the no kings crowd aren't even only anti-Western, they're anti-religious, they're anti-Christian. No kings but King Jesus isn't the cry of a bunch of atheists.
Right.
So, historically speaking, the Ten Commandments and the reading of the Bible belong in schools as a historical reference to our foundations.
Well, yes, and I missed the No Kings protest when King Charles was speaking to Congress, interestingly enough.
Exactly.
But
No, they were busy clapping like seals.
yeah, exactly.
Or.
Yeah,
Cheer the king.
exactly.
Cheer the king.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
Speaking of the king subject, Roger Williams uniquely, just as you said, King Jesus. This is what he believed. We had two swords, two tables, and two kings. Right. So our two kingdoms. The kingdom of man, which is of this world, and the kingdom of Christ. And the two swords. We had the sword of the state, which is to prevent evil, Romans 13, and promote the good. And then we have the sword of the spirit, which changes men's hearts. And Roger Williams' whole point, his big point was liberty of conscience. You can force people to go to church on Sunday. That doesn't make them a Christian. That makes them a
Oh,
hypocrite.
oh,
So,
I talk about that all the time. Like when my books, I try to deal in subtle portrayal and nudges of Christianity. The stereotypical Bible thumper, right? Beating someone over the head with the Bible. And oh, here comes that wacko Christian again. Just tell him you're a believer and let him go on. That's a fake, that's a false, it's not a real conversion. They have to really, truly accept Christ. And you're not helping save their soul if you're beating them over the head with the Bible that they lied to you about being a Christian.
yeah, exactly. And also, and Roger would say that you're violating their conscience. That's a rape of the soul to take somebody to church or to do whatever, force people to be religiously conformed to what you believe is the true faith or true denomination. And he also, as far as the Ten Commandments were concerned, I thought this was very unique. He believed that the two tables of the Ten Commandments, the civil governments, ever since ancient Israel, he believed ancient Israel was the only theocracy sanctioned by God, which if we're biblical Christians, that is true. It's the only theocracy sanctioned by God. So that all civil governments since then can only enforce the second table of the Ten Commandments, people's relationship with one another, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. But the first table, our relationship to God, that's a personal, private matter, which I think was very brilliant and very interesting and very radical at the
I
time.
love it. I
Yes, very
absolutely.
interesting.
And to me, that is more Christ-like. And
Right.
again, he invited, he wanted people to come. He didn't force people to come.
Amen.
A couple things you mentioned back to the king. Yeah, King Charles. So the left is clapping like trained seals. Why? Because the king's in Congress peddling left wing man-made climate money laundering schemism. So of course they're clapping the king.
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing is, you mentioned we're talking about the Ten Commandments. Penn, I talk about all the time, of Penn and Teller, the
Oh yeah.
comedy magician team. Uh, Penn, devout atheist,
Right.
but I don't have a problem with him. I love him. I think he's a great role model because he's not one of those I hate all religion type atheists. He's like with gays, tolerant, okay, that's fine. That's between you and God. But there's a difference between tolerance and the red line, as I coined, gaytivists, engaging in gaytivism and pushing pedophilia. That's all those are two different things. But Penn has said over and over, he has no problem with the Ten Commandment tablets being on the SCOTUS building and Moses being up there. He recognizes, though he's an atheist, whether you come to thou shalt not, he has no right to steal my stuff nor me his, or him the right to kill me, or me the right to kill him. And whether you come at that through the theological or just, hey, it's just a good social standard.
Right.
Whatever way you come at that is fine, but that's recognizing our history. He's not trying to destroy our history like most cultural Marxist atheists want, or even, I dare say, Matthew 23, vipers, snakes, blind guides who don't, want to take a scripture or two, but ignore the context of the whole Bible and destroy our culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important distinction, as you mentioned, that so the founders believed in freedom. They didn't believe in anarchy. So that's an important distinction. Roger Williams wasn't an anarchist. As a Christian man, he believed in authority and government. We need government. Government is sanctioned by God, but the founders just believed, and I think rightly so, we need limited government. And
Yes.
and so yeah, and then as far as atheist goes, like you mentioned, Penn, I knew he was an atheist. I think he's funny. I've seen his stuff. I didn't know all that he believes, but that's good that he's not against that stuff because here's the reality. We are not a theocracy, of course, but we are foundationally Christian. You can't deny this fact. All laws are based on a culture's beliefs. So if we go to the Middle East, there's polygamy. We don't have polygamy here. Why don't we have polygamy here? If you go to Papua New Guinea, there are tribes who do cannibalism as part of their culture. We don't have cannibalism. Why is that? Why do we have these laws? Because they're foundationally from the Bible. These are
Yes.
laws. Our culture was a Christian
Endowed
culture.
by our Creator with
Alienable
unalienable
rights.
rights.
Right.
And Adams, our Constitution is for a moral and just religious people that is wholly inadequate for the governance of any other.
Right.
And we've strayed from that. And I was on, coincidentally, Joel calls his show Church and State. I was on Church and State the other day show, and he came up with a term I liked, minarchism, right? Indeed, left of complete right, zero government, minarchism, minimal limit. That's indeed what our government was supposed to be. Minarchism, not no law or no rules, and every man, woman, and child for themselves, like total anarchy. They were not for that, as you pointed out. They were minarchists had they thought of the term like Joel did.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And even the deists would, which I guess you would call an agnostic, like a Benjamin Franklin, he said, if men are so evil with religion, what would they be without it? So again, these people weren't, even the people who weren't Christian weren't against religion. They weren't,
Yes,
they didn't want it.
yes.
The first thing George Washington did after Congress ratified the First Amendment,
Prayer.
Congress asked him to have a day of prayer and
Yeah,
thanksgiving. Wait a minute, a president of the United States, he can't pray. He can't talk about God and Jesus.
yeah.
That's ridiculous. Get out of here. Separation
Well,
of church and state.
yeah, yeah. again, they don't want separation of church and state. As I wrote on Before It's News decades ago, they want libreligion, tinyurl.com/libreligion. They want separation from church
Yep.
to state.
Yep.
That's what they want. Democrats to be God. They want
Yeah.
government
The
to
state.
be
Yep.
God, to replace religion. Yes. And I made what did I do? I lost my note. But yeah, something else you said triggered something in a good way. And I forget what it was now, though. But oh, Ben Franklin. Yes. An American Experiment was recently in the movies. I didn't get a chance to see it. It didn't
Oh
play
yeah,
at
I
a
didn't either.
theater near
Yeah.
me, but in it indeed was the exchange between Franklin and the guy of the Black Robe Regiment. I forget, right? He's out flying the kite with the key to prove electricity. And Ben rightly, and you could find it in his writings. We're not making this up. I mean, you could read the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, and their own memoirs. It's not like we're making this stuff up. He's out there flying it, and I am but the tool. I'm flying the kite. The electricity will hit it. It will come down to the key, and the other guy, the preacher, says, "But who is the source of that lightning and power?" God's nature. So, yes, that exchange shows the exact dynamic you're talking about. Ben Franklin as not necessarily a Christian, but a believer in a higher power.
Right. And yeah, a lot of people will bring up the fact that there were deists involved in the founding. Well, they act like they were
They
atheists.
still believe in God.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it was Thomas Jefferson who wrote the Declaration of Independence. One nation under, or that's not what it says. That's but yeah, that says, as
we
you
know
mentioned,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. These truths we are self-evident. That our rights are endowed by our Creator.
Yeah.
What? How would
Yeah.
you be?
An atheist doesn't say that.
Yeah, right. And that's a pretty important thing to
Yeah.
put the mentioning of God, and yet what about the separation of church and state? You can't put God in the founding documents and then at the end
Yeah.
of the Constitution put in the year of our Lord. Oh
Yes.
my, what kind of
Amen. Amen. I just made myself a note here I've got a song, No Kings But King Jesus. And our battle cry was that. And these people a nation who threw off the crown 250-ish years ago, they're out protesting no kings. And as we both said, they're clapping like seals for an actual king when he's here. So I'm going to put my No Kings But King Jesus song at the end of this episode for people to hear. Uh, but also in the notes here, I see it is touched on. Do you go back? Because people think, well, Catholics and Protestants, that was really an Irish English thing. Well, a little of that was mixed in, but yeah. In fact, in the book of Kennedy, as well as my nonfiction constitutionalist politics books, Kennedy ponders her Christianity and laments that very fact. Catholics and Protestants murdering and maiming each other well into the 80s over minor, although some would consider it major, I call it minor doctrinal differences. Focus on what we agree with under Christ.
right? So
But you go way back to the origins of it in the Church of England. And
yes, that's correct. So I tell the history of why freedom of religion came about. It's because for instance, in England, funny enough, the king or the queen was the head of the church, and so, but they would come in, and some of them would be different denominations. One could be a Catholic, like Queen Mary, and slaughter all the Protestants, and then a Protestant king would get in, and they persecute the Catholics. So it was going back and forth like a seesaw. It was ridiculous.
ridiculous,
It was
yes.
ridiculous. So that was the foundation. This is what pushed people here. That's why it's a part of our identity in America, and that's why it's so
Yeah.
important, and we can't lose it. Of course, we got the wacky leftists who are against it, but now we have people on the right who are calling for Christian nationalism,
Yeah.
which sounds good when you're a Christian. You're like, yeah, I love my country. I'm a Christian. I must be a Christian nationalist. Well, what these people are calling for is bringing back a king. They want a Christian
Yeah.
prince to rule
Yeah.
over the country because they think that will solve the nation's problems, and it won't. And one last thing is Roger Williams' brother was in, I think, Turkey or somewhere in the Middle East. And he said he found more tolerance in these Muslim countries than he did in all of Europe, which is insane. That shouldn't be the case.
Where they're threatening to behead you if you dare say you're a Christian. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah,
in a
right,
way, in certain parts, yes, certain parts, no. But yeah,
right.
I
Well,
get what you're saying here.
right.
And indeed, we have come a long way. And it's because of our nation's foundations and the application of these principles. The rest of the West, not the East, I mean China, and despite Putin's supposed newfound Christianity, he's made the Russian Orthodox. You said you've got Russian back. He's turned the Russian Orthodox Church into the Putin Church.
Yeah.
It's not Christian anymore. It's a fake Putin nationalist church now. Oh, you agree with that or no?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that, oh, this is real. I'm not kidding. On the woke right, I've heard from people close to me that Russia is the good guys. They're protecting Christianity. They're the modern crusaders. You can't even share your faith in Russia. It's against the law. I mean, this
Right.
is insane. You can't preach the gospel. And they
Well,
are not, it's ridiculous. It's
it's
ridiculous.
the same reason how and why a spam burglar can get elected as governor because people listen to what's coming out their mouth and ignore the
Right.
biblical principle you shall know them by their fruits. Their actions speak louder than words, but they sound great. Putin sounds great when he's spewing that nonsense. He doesn't, he's KGB. He learned from history. Pope John Paul II, Reagan, and Thatcher brought down the Soviet Union together with the Russian Orthodox Church within, corrupting the Soviet Union within with the help of the Pope. He knows that. So if he wants to reconstitute the Soviet Empire, he has to pretend, well, we may not be full Christian, but we're Christian light, or as you said, he's got a lot of idiots here bamboozled into thinking, oh, he's really the next Jesus. I mean, no, he's a lot closer to the Antichrist than he is to Jesus. Yes?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Look, I respect him as a strong leader who's good for his country, but they're our enemy, our long-standing enemy for since, time
Yeah.
immemorial. And, unfortunately on the woke right, we're having a cultural Marxism where instead of tearing down statues, they're tearing down our history, saying Churchill was the bad guy and the West is the bad guy. And they're even saying, I don't know if you've heard this, but this is that we as America we hate Catholicism and we bomb Nagasaki specifically because they had the largest Catholic population in Japan. And so it was an attack. Yet
Well,
we
yeah.
the largest
Yeah.
denomination of Christians in this country is Catholic, and we've had two Catholic presidents. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It is. It is absurd. And I forgot where I was going to go there. Because you mentioned Nagasaki. Oh, darn, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it was along the lines of this absurdity and this misapp. Oh, it
Right.
wasn't. It's true. It's undeniably true that FDR turned back boats of Jews
Yeah,
fleeing
what about that?
persecution in Europe.
Yeah,
So
right.
was FDR anti-Semitic? Well, we could debate that,
Right.
but those facts would suggest so. And he was reluctant to get us into World War II. He only went against Germany because Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. They were allies. Germany declared war on us when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. So he had no choice, but he was keeping us out of that war. So does it it doesn't mean he was siding with anti-Christian nations in that point, but there was at least a streak of listening to the anti-Semitic crowd and turning back the Jews from being able to flee Europe. Yes.
Yeah, right. And if we're talking about attacking Catholics, I mean, let's look to Europe. I mean, when Hitler invaded, Italy or all these other countries that are Catholic or Orthodox, why don't we mention that? Was he not attacking Catholicism? I mean, he wasn't a good figure for the Catholic Church or any Christian denomination.
Yeah.
So
No, Putin Putin is a lot like Hitler. He's a student of history. He learned Hitler feigned he didn't want to marry because he wanted to be the father of all. Christ-like, he feigned, right? Very anti-abortion, unless if you were a Slav or a black or a Jew, then murder them. Yes, but yeah, he wanted this quasi-religiosity to be able to cater and indeed summon the church went along with that. So yeah, it's more complex, and the problem is people are simple. Too simple nowadays. How stupid have Americans become is one of my thelibertybeacon.com articles. And your documentary, again, Church and State, Roger Williams and the Founding of Freedom of Religion, not from it, is about educating because we don't get it in our indoctrination factories.
Well, that's where this comes from. This freedom from religion stuff comes from public school and college educated people.
The university, the atheist communistic universities, especially, yes.
Yes, they're anti-American, they're anti-Christian, and so in a sense, I don't know if you've heard of Yuri Bezmenov, but he was a KGB defector in the '80s, and he came and he spoke about what the plan of the Russians was. And at this point, it seems to have succeeded. Destroy from the inside. They go demoralization and so forth. They go to the universities and they transform thought. And he said within 2 or 3 generations, you've completed your task. And
Saul Alinsky, the idol of the left, a cultural Marxist student, and all of Alinsky is indeed that Russian communist plan of undermining within.
Right, and destroying our identity. That's what's happening right now. People don't know who or what we are. And both on the woke right and the woke left, they're trying to transform it into some, on the left, they want to become an atheistic, communistic country. On the right, they want to become a theocratic communist country. And it's scary.
I oppose both. For the record, for the record, we agree we oppose both. We were never meant to be a theocracy, and that's part of the whole point of the separation of church and state. There shall not be a one denominational or even one religion choosing Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, like some of the Islamo-fascist left wanting to impose an Islamo-fascist caliphate government here. I oppose that, whether it be Islam or Christianity. It's not meant to be that way, but that doesn't mean you eliminate it either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And again, with Roger Williams and the 2 kings, and that ancient Israel was the only theocracy sanctioned by God, he believed that the kingdom of Christ is internal in the body of Christ, and we are sent out among nations. Jesus didn't start a nation. He has a nation, Israel, and he'll return and he'll rule and reign from Israel. In the meantime, we're a spiritual kingdom. He sends us out into the nations to preach the gospel, transform nations. We're not to establish governments.
Right. Preach and teach, not like Islamo-fascism at the barrel of a gun or will chop your head off if you don't convert.
Yes, and as compared to what, thank the Lord for things that we can compare to, like communism, like Islam. Islam is more of a political ideology to me than it is a religion. It's religion.
Depending.
There's no
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
separation of church and state in Islam.
Right. Right.
So,
In most of it anyway. Like I support Dr. Sudi Jasser, who wrote the book Reform, the Battle of the for the Soul of Islam. He applies and believes in the separation issues, as opposed to a Rashida Taliban representative out of Michigan who is an Islamo fascist
right.
terrorist sympathizer supporter. There, it's like Christianity, and some people still don't know this. They don't know, and they just refuse to learn. In Christianity, you have sects and denominations, and in my Terror Strikes book, coming soon to a near city near you, I go into in the Tokyo chapter the Christian doomsday cult in Tokyo that engaged in terrorism, who are like the modern Islamo fascist Twelver cult,
Right.
who indeed there's Sunni, there's Shia, there's Wahhabism, there's the Twelver cult, and the Twelver cult, Arabic Islamo-fascist 12 cultists are the ones oppressing the Persians who are not Arab, they're Persian, different, and most people don't figure that out. And also the Zoro somethingism.
Zoroastrian.
Yeah,
Zoroastrian, yeah.
well, is the traditional real faith of the Persian people, not Islam. It's being forced and imposed upon them. So I had that argument the other day. It is a collectivist, absolutist notion, and it's anti-biblical to say all Muslims are, either terrorists or terror. Germany, not all of them were Nazis. A lot of them were silent, and look what happened, and it got out of control. And that history is rhyming again there. There aren't enough Zudi Jassers speaking up and out against his own faith and that radicalism to prevent another situation like 30s Germany in the 2030s now. Uh, so, but yeah, it's anti-biblical to be a collectivist absolutist. No group of black, white, or pink polka dotted. If it's skin tone or religious based or politically based, you cannot declaratively make collectivist absolutist statement. All this group thinks this. We are not the Borg.
Yes, right. You could say all are under sin. We could say that,
Oh,
right?
uh, uh, I for every rule there's an exception, and
Yes,
yeah,
exactly,
you thank
exactly.
you for that correction.
But
I'm
yeah,
human, I'm frail, I'm flawed. I can make a mistake, and thank you for correcting me on that.
no,
That's the one exception to the rule.
yes, right. And look at the nation of Israel, 12 tribes, two kingdoms. I mean, and this is God's chosen nation. He created it. And yeah, it was not it was not it wasn't very collectivist, as you mentioned. It wasn't unified and so forth.
Right.
But yeah,
God created us and gave us free will.
yeah.
Martin Luther King Jr., the content of one's character, regardless of your skin tone, you have free will and choice. You are not part of the group that the left wants to insist you must belong and think exactly like. We are individuals. Everyone must be given the opportunity to show their character.
Yes, and I heard this Jewish conservative guy from England. He framed it like this: that communism wants to make everybody into bricks, whereas capitalism or free markets uses what God created, stones, because we're not all the same, and it works with stones. It builds with stones, whereas communism tries to make everybody conform to the same image, to strip them of their individuality, their God-given
Yeah.
individuality and identity, and build with that. And
I
that's anti-American and it's anti-human, really. It's horrible.
Yes. I wish I would have thought of that just the other day. I will tack this on as a song also. E pluribus unum, right? From many one. Yes, we are stones, not bricks, not all shaped the same. But yes, building, putting stones together, coming together voluntarily by choice, although e pluribus unum is almost a collectivist absolutist kind of statement. But I got 4 or 5 minutes for a song. There's a little creative license. Cut me break, right? Context with the other songs matter. It's not an absolutist statement. From many one, we want immigrants who have that philosophy and want to join the melting pot. It isn't appropriation, it's homage. I'm part Irish, German, Italian, Polish. All right. I can't afford it otherwise. Today being May the 4th be with you, right? Star Wars Day. And as I joked on X, I love it when celebrities are warring, right? Star Wars. I can't pass the bad puns. But tomorrow is Cinco de Mayo Day. It's
Right.
not appropriation if I were to go up to Mexican town in Detroit and celebrate with my Mexican friends.
Right.
And DEI is segregation and separation in the name of diversity and inclusion. But when you declare Black only dorms or Black only graduations or Latino only, that's not inclusion. That's not, that's
Right.
separatism.
Right.
We are the most diverse nation and inclusive on the planet that it has ever seen. And why I wrote my E pluribus unum, that's why it's our motto. The
Right.
melting pot from many one. We are inclusive and diverse.
Yeah, right. That and the founders, though the immigration initially was from Europe, it was from different countries in Europe. And as we know, European nations are very different in their cultures and languages. New York used to be New Amsterdam, so so they understood. They were very brilliant men with great foresight. It's amazing how they thought of so much ahead of time.
Yeah.
Particularly the Electoral College, I find to be the most brilliant thing that of course, at first,
We
most
are
of us
not
thought
a
it was,
mobocracy. We are a constitutionally limited republic. And the 17th Amendment, I want repealed to bastardization of the checks and balances. They were never to be direct elected like the House was. Separation within the Congress. Senators are supposed to represent the rights of the states and therefore come and be appointed by the states. We've destroyed that. The left has destroyed that. I want that repealed. But speaking of bad jokes, back to King Charles. I love when he was joking with Trump. And he said, well, Trump, you said if it wasn't for the US, we'd all be speaking German. But if it weren't for the English, you'd all be speaking French. I just about
yeah,
fell off my chair. That is, it's a true. Yeah, right.
yeah,
In
right,
England and France in the New World were battling. So indeed, if not breaking from England, we might have otherwise been breaking free of France
right,
at the time and
right,
speaking French, like
right.
Quebecians across
Yeah,
the northern border.
right, yeah. And yeah, he had some good zingers in his speech. Yeah, he was actually pretty funny. And
Yeah,
but yeah, and as far as the French are concerned, another thing about Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, all these men were appalled at the French Revolution. They thought it was an atheistic revolution. They did away with God, and they were in their writings they rebuked the French Revolution because it was atheistic. They thought it was ridiculous.
Mhm.
How could you? And George Washington himself, how can you have a moral society without religion? And as you mentioned earlier, John Adams.
Adams. Yep.
Yeah, of course. So, they knew that religion had a place in society. You can't have, God forbid we have an atheist society. We'll end up, having famines and murdering millions of our people like the Russians and the Chinese. Is that what that and that's what the leftists want, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
You
They
know?
fail. That's why the left doesn't want history and civics
Right.
taught in schools. They want it to repeat. As long as they are, it's all about them as the ruling elites lording over. It doesn't matter. I call them the commie fasci sociocrats. Those three are the same damn thing now. It
Yeah,
doesn't
right.
matter if it's one dictator or a Politburo, it's
Right.
one or a few lording over the many, all left of spectrum governance. They're all for it. Well, time has flown. We've blown past the 30 minutes I usually like to keep my shows at. So, and I will, of course, put in the notes and on the bottom scroll, churchandstatedoc.com is the website. Yes.
Yes, that's correct. www.churchandstatedoc, short for documentary.com. And there you can find all the ways to watch it for free. And please
I
like,
noticed
share.
you too. I watched the trailer. I didn't watch the documentary, but I watched the trailer on YouTube.
Yes, so the film is on YouTube. You can watch it there. If you type in Church and State documentary into the search, should be #1 or top 5. And again, the full title is Church and State, Roger Williams and the Founding of Freedom of Religion.
Thank you, and I haven't said your name enough, Andrew Linn. You know, I've been in politics forever. They say you need to touch an audience 7 times, right?
Okay,
So you should repeat
good to
a
know.
name at least 7 times to get it to stick, and I haven't done that. Andrew Linn, no, only two N's, Linn, and again, that'll be on the bottom scroll for those viewing on the video behind the scenes channel. Although, and that's why we speak it aloud for the 40-ish audio only platforms and the benefit of the transcript. Thank you, Andrew, for stopping by.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. God bless.
Take care. God bless. Love you all.